Coogs House. A weekend is supposed to be somewhere between 48 and 72 hours off of work, depending on who you ask and what their job is. But after weekend commitments, it's very apparent that Willie Fritz's staff worked the entire time.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below, assuming that the square inches you get are the same between the two, if you prefer square-shaped or round-shaped pizza. Just wrong answer this one. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. More on that in a minute. But folks, it was an exciting weekend to be following the Houston Cougars. Now, I was following it somewhat sporadically amongst a bunch of vet visits with my dog and back and forth. And I have to say it was nice to have the good news that did not cost me a bunch of money like the vet did, the good news that kept flowing out of the football program, right? Had some help in the secondary added over both nights of the weekend, some offensive playmakers that a couple of them have played together and shown some real chemistry. But I think the thing that most fans want to hear about are the big fellas up front. Now, Houston added 3 defensive front 7 players over the weekend, each of which has various reasons for people to get excited about as they're committing. The first one is actually I want to talk about is actually the most recent commit, and that is defensive tackle / defensive end Jaylen Satchel. Jaylen is 6'1", 300 pounds, originally from Long Island, went to high school in Maryland. He started off at Temple, played a year at Old Dominion, and is now coming to Houston with 2 years left of eligibility. He did start both his freshman season and sophomore seasons at Temple and Old Dominion. Played in a lot of games. He's a big time when I look at defensive linemen that do this. High impact, low stat type of guys where he's constantly eating blocks, absorbing multiple players, forcing the ball to change directions. So he makes plays without making the tackle a lot, so I guess what I'm trying to say. For my lineman gurus, if you've been in the show for a long time, I like talking about line play. He played both the 3-tech and the 4-tech and even and odd fronts. And for folks that are new to line play or new to the show, what that means is that he's typically lining up in the B gap or head up on the tackle, right? So a little bit more of that edge type of spot. What I'm looking at with what Houston was running on defense in the spring game, that lines up perfectly. A lot of bigger bodies are playing that spot for Houston in that game. So I imagine that's where he'll play as well. And looking at some of his film on YouTube, he does play violently and with great explosion. He does keep his arms pretty short, though, right? He's much more of a run stopper, gap plugger kind of guy than a long arm to tackle and bend the corner kind of guy, right? And that's good. Trust me, we got other speed in other places. That's a good thing for Houston. I noticed in both the Temple and Old Dominion stuff I was watching, he's getting double teamed a lot. I think that's a respect thing, not just a positional thing. You see the 3 technique typically is one of the guys that defenses have to double. He's typically like that type of athlete. I mean, Aaron Donald played that in the NFL at the highest level, right? I mean, that's the kind of guy we're talking about here. He did play some, Jaylen did, against Houston in 2022, his redshirt freshman year, when Temple played Houston up at Temple. That was the game Golden catches a touchdown at the end of the game. Houston had been kind of playing ugly before that. I think a lot of the front 7 kind of issues that Houston had were with guys like Jaylen Satchel to block, right? I mean, Jaylen provided a lot of problems, frankly, up front there. Didn't make a whole lot of tackles again, but did deter a lot. He's going to be joined in the next transfer class by edge player Gabe Peterson. Gabe is from Kansas originally, but went to New Mexico State at a high school. A 6'2", 250, and plays some outside linebacker, plays some defensive end, puts his hand in the dirt sometimes, is up on his two legs sometimes. Think about the way, like, over the course of the season, you saw Houston use David Agwegbu and even Nelson Caesar at times as that, like, 250-pound kind of just football player, right? I could see him being a rush backer to start. Maybe he eats his way into being more of a hand-in-the-dirt defensive end type guy over the course of his time at Houston. At New Mexico State, he played in 27 games over 2 years, had 72 tackles. Last year, he had 3.5 sacks in Conference USA. Started both years, like I said, at New Mexico State. Was a captain last season. So it tells you a little bit about the kind of kid he is if he's a captain as a sophomore. I do think he'll be on the field a lot for Houston this year as a C-gap rusher. He's got some innate ball finding skills there. Even if he only had 3.5 sacks last year in Conference USA, I think what you're really seeing out of that is he chased down the ball a lot of times and forced the ball to change directions. Not unlike we talk about Jaylen. But I went through both those guys kind of quickly because I want to take a moment to talk about Christian Brathwaite, 6'1", 220-pound linebacker from LSU. He played in actually 5 games last year for LSU, but gets to count the years of redshirt. So he has 4 years of eligibility left. A linebacker from Cy Ranch is coming home. He was a 4-star commit at 4-star high school player at a high school when he committed to LSU. Fun story there is he actually committed to Baylor initially, decommitted from Baylor, recommitted within the hour to LSU. Really, really talented athletes that kind of worked his way up a bunch of national recruiting boards his senior year of high school. And frankly, got to LSU. I don't know where he found himself on the depth chart or whatever. Last, like I said, was just his redshirt year. He played in a handful of games still, but he's coming back home to Houston, and he's got an incredible set of skills and frame to work with. I don't know where to put a ceiling on this guy's development. He's crazy, crazy athletic and talented. He's kind of got a will linebacker like skill set right now. So out there in coverage, some long, rangy, covers a lot of ground, can cover tight ends, can cover running backs, etc. But if you look at his frame, it's like, oh, he could grow into that rush backer, that third down pass rusher. He's got room to put a bunch of good weight on at 6'1" and change, at about 220, right? So I don't know where this guy is in 4 years as far as his player development and what skill set he's going to be working on while he's at Houston, but I know the kid can play some football. Had a great high school career at Cy Ranch, and frankly was productive in the couple games he got to play this year as a redshirt at LSU. Big get for Willie Fritz and the staff. Again, that's 3 different defensive front 7 guys that honestly could all make a difference as early as this fall, or in the case of Christian Brathwaite, like, who knows? I mean, are we talking about like first day NFL draft pick in a couple years? Are we talking about all Big 12 kind of talent in the near future? I mean, he has that kind of skill set and frame combination that you just don't really know where it's going to be. In the more immediate future, I think Satchel is going to provide a lot of rotational depth with those front guys. We saw last year in so many games that Houston have a great half and then fall apart in the second. That's because the Big 12 gauntlet requires a lot more depth and talent in the trenches, especially on the defense side of the ball. We're constantly rotating guys. I mean, we saw Houston play TCU last season, and TCU went legitimately 9 deep in their 3-4 defense in terms of their front 3, right? They had 3 different lines that all played equal amount in that front 7. Having a bunch of guys to rotate through those spots keeps you fresh, keeps you getting after the quarterback, keeps you fighting in the run game. Really, really important. So adding all this depth, I guess I have to say, is important. And then again, who knows where the ceiling on it could go and what could be coming next. Now, Houston is building, we hope, towards an eventual Big 12 championship. If not, this season we're kind of switching gears here into the new era, maybe in the near future. But if you're trying to build a championship team for your roster, trying to put together a roster to get whatever big wins for your small company, that can be really, really challenging. And when you're hiring for your small business, you got to find quality professionals and teammates, just like Houston's trying to do right now. And if you're trying to do that, there's no better place than LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is the tools you need to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just some other job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open at the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, I want to spend the second segment talking some about the offense side of the ball, because I think that it's worth pointing out Houston had a pretty good weekend overall. But because of the excitement about some of these defensive guys, the offense, I think, got a little undersold here, right? First, they had offensive lineman on Friday named Sam Seacrest, 6'6", 305-pound kid coming in from Louisville. He's got 3 years of eligibility left. Originally grew up in Indianapolis. And I have to say, for a guy that didn't have a whole lot of snaps under his belt at Louisville, he has some pretty impressive high-end group of five type of teams looking after him. Obviously, this is the kind of get you get with the Power 5 branding that Houston has now, right? I don't know if American Athletic Conference Houston, even with Willie Fritz at the helm, necessarily lands a Sam Seacrest, but that extra oomph obviously is a big factor here for a guy that didn't have Power 5 offers in the transfer portal. Frankly, had he had some more film on it from Louisville, he might have. He's got this gigantic frame, listed as an interior offensive lineman at 6'6", 305 too. I think that we'll talk about that in a second as far as how interesting that could be. But I think the deal here is that this guy has high potential, and Houston gets him over other top-end group of five programs because they have the bumper there that is Power 5. Now, again, 6'6", 305 playing interior offensive line. I think this is one of two things. One is adding depth and rotation and competition to the inside, right? I think guard, center guard is like the best part of the offensive line for Houston right now. I think the center is as good as it gets. Pancake Hunter's a talented young man, had a great spring game. But what I really think could also happen here is at 6'6", is there potential to either bump him to a right tackle spot, maybe add some competition there, try and develop your own right tackle out of nothing there, or are you thinking you move him into right guard and move Tank over to right tackle because you trust what you got in Tank Jenkins or something like that, right? Like, there's different ways to configure this offensive line. And with that frame, he's got options, right? He's big enough and long enough to play on the edge if you need him to. So we'll see what kind of things they're trying to develop out of this guy. Again, not a whole lot of college tape, probably the reason he's looking to transfer. And I think Houston's a great landing spot for him to come add to the rotation, add to the depth in the O-line room. Now, offensive linemen are big and fun, and I love line play. But the sexy names out here are the receivers. Houston landed two of them, and folks, these guys are good. They landed Marquise Shoulders and Devin Williams, both of whom come from Tulsa. Now, have to say that for a run-heavy offense up at Tulsa, these two guys dominated the pass game in that offense. For referencing here, Tulsa only completed 15.8 passes per game. Only completed 15.8. And Marquise Shoulders played in just 5 games before suffering injury last season. In those 5 games, he had 5 touchdowns and 283 yards. Again, they don't throw the ball much up at Tulsa, and he had 5 touchdowns. It's a touchdown per game in an offense where they don't throw the football all that often. Now, big thing that helps out Houston here and getting Marquise Shoulders to Houston is he went to Katy Tompkins High School. 5'9", 170 pounds, and the kid's got speed. And watching his stuff on YouTube, I was really, really impressed by the way he created separation at just 5'9", and it wasn't just putting on the burners, although he can do that. He was really good at, while the ball's in the air and tracking it, kind of shifting his gears back and forth to kind of keep the defensive back on his toes and then having that last burst, right, before the ball gets to a level where a guy's going to catch it, right? That's on the deep ball kind of stuff. Underneath, the speed obviously comes in on things like the quick slant, really, really great over the middle of the field as well. Lots of different options for him in Houston as far as what he's going to be able to do. Frankly, really nice to get him after losing some speed at receiver in the last two transfer portal windows. And nice to see that kind of speed coming back in to Houston for sure. And then his teammate, Devin Williams, comes in from Tulsa as well. Devin is 6'1" and change, about $190, a much bigger guy. And what I was really impressed with from him in watching Tulsa is, he had 2 touchdowns, and I frankly feel like he might have had more and a more pass-heavy offense, about 400 yards receiving too. Again, this offense did not pass the ball a whole lot. But he got thrown a lot of really challenging balls, it looks like to me. A lot of competitive, jump up in the air, fight with the corner for it. The ball is sailing out of bounds. He has to go take it between heaven and earth right there at the middle of the air, right? Just snag the ball out and bring it back down. And try and get his feet down in bounds. And he did it a number of different times over the course of the season, but constantly being asked to compete for the football, go up and get it, come back down. Now, both of these guys, I think, fit into Houston's offense pretty well. I think you can see Marquise Shoulders legitimately start at slot. I mean, the same way I think Mekhi Muse could help out some in that kind of spot. Speed at the slot position is going to be really, really important for the RPO stuff we saw Houston running in the spring game. A lot of those quick, if this, then that kind of decisions require having a lot of speed at that part, right? It's going to be really important for Houston to get out of this. And those kinds of bubbles and quick slants and sticks, getting speed to get the right spots and right landmarks at those times is going to be a vital thing for the offense to have, and having speed like you got out of Marquise Shoulders is going to be important. I also think that in so many if this then that, the reason we think that Joseph Manjack's going to have a big year as well is that frankly you're going to get thrown balls that you got to go compete for, right? They're going to be making a read on the will linebacker, pulling the handoff and chucking it out, spitting it out to the wide receiver. Well, they didn't read where your corner was. They're just throwing the ball because you need to go get it, right? And that's just the way that college football works. You're trusting your teammates. You got high-quality, talented teammates. And seeing Devin Williams compete for the ball in the same way is really, really going to be an important part of what we're doing here, right? Now, I know we've talked before about how Houston lost talented receivers and doesn't necessarily have to replace them at a 1-to-1 receiver ratio. But I do think wide receivers, as long as you have space on your roster, are something you can never have enough of. Honestly, I've seen great offenses run where they just kind of rotate 4 in, 4 out, 4 in, 4 out, just run, because you want those guys' legs fresh over the course of the game. Hamstrings can get tight, ankles can get rolled, etc. You don't want any of that to happen, but it can. And then moreover, just like that defensive line depth we talked about from TCU, where they were coming at you over and over and over with fresh bodies, you're kind of attacking the secondary in the same way with fresh bodies over and over and over again. The more receivers you have on the roster, I think Houston's going to run a lot of 3 receiver sets this year. A lot of 21 personnel, a lot of 12 personnel, depending on what you call that third guy in the backfield. Regardless, having a lot of guys and a lot of different versatile options there is going to be really important. Houston pulled in 2 of the best in the transfer portal available over the weekend. And it's because they want to go compete. They want to compete in the Big 12. And you guys have heard me talk about being competitive as well with this new game called Monopoly Go. And I don't mean to beat you down about it because I talk about it seemingly every day, but I love Monopoly Go because I love competing and winning, and it's a really, really fun game. You can do that with your friends. You can also team up with your friends. You don't have to play against them all the time, but team with them for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards, and the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, like different stickers, different playing pieces for the different travel boards, all kinds of funny emojis to send back and forth when you're trash talking. Plus, Monopoly Go just feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot pachinko. There's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you need to win, or rent frenzies or whatever you want. They've got There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free at Google Play or App Store. Game on. All right, last but not least, I got a couple of defensive backs that Houston got over the weekend. It seemed like defensive backs came in like overnight, both nights of the weekend, Friday and Saturday night. And I have to say that there are a couple guys I'm excited about because of the versatility they bring. And I think one of them's a steal. But the first one you got to talk about, I guess, should be Brian Massey. He's probably the name you've heard of more. From Katy Tompkins High School at 5'11", $190, plays safety. He went up to school up the road at SMU. Before coming over to the good guys, he had 23 solo tackles last year, 30 total tackles at safety. Played a couple seasons up there. He's got a couple years of eligibility left. I'm intrigued by this guy because he's got a square body with shifty speed, and he ran back some kicks as well. We saw them put Mekhi Muse back there. We saw them put Joseph Manjack back there. I wonder if they want that more sturdy body. And I know that's a little counterintuitive. The football coach in me has always thought the punt return guy should be a defensive player. The kickoff return people should be offensive players. That's because the 0.2% chance in the back of my head that the other team is faking a punt. I want someone who's made a tackle before in the football field, right? Whereas my kickoff return guys, not the same situation. Having Brian back there makes me a little more comfortable just initially. I had a couple pretty good returns for SMU in his time there. Regardless, he's got that kind of ball skill. He's got that kind of speed that makes him a natural returner, right? He's not the kind of guy that lays a bunch of big hits over the middle, though he does have the size and strength to take some of the ground on his own. Doesn't need help with that at all. But truthfully, in watching some stuff from SMU over the weekend to kind of get ready to talk about this guy, it became very apparent that he just took away part of the field in a way that meant that he only gets about 30 tackles, right? That's the way that goes. Not because he wasn't on the field enough, but because the ball wasn't coming his way enough because things were covered over there, right? It's a good sign to me. And frankly, it's good to see a kid from Katy come back to the good side of that whole I-45 thing. The other corner, the other defensive back that got is a corner named Devin Pringle. He was the top, if not a top, D2 transfer. Went to Grand Valley State University. I'm really, really excited about this guy. Now, Houston lost Isaiah Hamilton at corner over the weekend. I guess he committed to Ole Miss, formerly committed to Ole Miss. Really talented kid, but he also was kind of moving up leagues, it felt like, right? Went from Texas Southern to the Big 12. Big step up for him. And he, frankly, was Houston's best corner last year. I think that's safe to say. I think Devin could have the same kind of jump. Now, it is hard to find film on GVSU. I don't mean to say that I have an extensive research on him or anything like that. But what I will say is you turn on any video you can find on YouTube or ESPN or anything with GVSU, and it is hard to do. But once you find it, about the third play where GVSU was on defense, you're like, oh, that's the best player on the team. He's that visibly, clearly better than the guys in the field he's out there with. He's listed at 5'10". I bet he's closer to 5'9". Listed at 180, but he's closer to 170, 175. He's not a giant, right? Not a giant. But my Lord, he makes plays in the ball. He is leaping in the air, has feels like a basketball player's kind of verticality, great speed once he's, closing on the ball. And then I said a little guy, he's one of the most physical players in every play I'm watching. He's physical line scrimmage, physical laying tackles, physical competing for the football. He's truly like out of his league in the best way possible in the Division II ranks, right? He clearly is looking to get out to the Power Five, looking to get to a high level of football, and Willie Fritz and company are that option for him. And I'm telling you guys, like if he gets on the same way we said this about Isaiah Hamilton last year, right? Who is now going on to the SEC. I hope Devin stays longer than that, right? But if you're looking for a corner to make plays next season, why not get the guy that's got a bunch of plays under his belt already? I know that you're changing divisions if you're going from D2 to D1, let alone to D1 Power 4, right? But it feels fairly simple to me. The guy's made plays his whole career. Why are we overcomplicating this? He can do it, right? And it's not. I understand that a lot of Division I corners, a lot of Power 4 corners would go make plays Division II level, right? I understand that. I get that. And frankly, I can see a couple of, people chuckling and typing your keyboard like you're like reinventing the wheel here by saying that, right? I'm saying put on the YouTube, put on the ESPN, put on something where you could see this guy play ball. And it's very, very clear that Devin Pringle is really, really good. I think all 8 of these guys are really, really talented. I really, really think that that Fritz's staff had an incredible weekend. First weekend since the transfer portal formally closed last week, and they sealed 8 guys I think could all make a difference next year. And that's important for a coach leading a rebuild and a Power 4 conference, trying to take a 4-8 team to the promised land sometime in the near future. I mean, if he has the right 5 years, he could get extended. I don't mean to say his contract's in jeopardy, anything like that, out the gates. But Willie Fritz is not a young man, right? If he wants to turn this around, it can't take forever. And guys like Marquis Shoulders, guys like Devin Pringle, guys like Gabe Peterson or Christian Brathwaite, those guys are really, really important to what Houston's trying to do and what Houston's trying to build. And we're going to be talking about them and the roster and getting ready for the fall a lot this May. We'll talk about basketball too and where those guys are going. Jamal Shedd got invited to the NBA Combine over the weekend, one of 78 players in the world to get to do so. The women's basketball team pulled in a couple transfers as well over the weekend. Lots of things to talk about at Locked On Cougs. So make sure you hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live. We'll be breaking down the Houston Cougars each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every morning. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.